No one remembers the first time a human said it.
Some say it was during the siege of Kalar Prime, when 6 billion refugees were trapped beneath orbital fire.
Others whisper it was on the dust plains of VRYNN9, when a single engineer shut down an entire fleet's AI by hand.
But across 10,000 worlds, every species knows this truth.
When a human mutters, "All right, that's it," you run.
The words were simple, primitive even, but they carried the same dread weight as a doomsday alarm. To the rest of the galaxy, they meant a limit had been reached, and something worse than war was about to begin.
Tonight, aboard the Ardent Resolve, that phrase hung just above a whisper.
Captain Mara Keen leaned over the tactical table, her dark hair pulled back, eyes flicking between orbit diagrams.
The Resolve wasn't built for diplomacy, it was an old Terran Navy corvette retrofitted for peacekeeping.
But peacekeeping had never worked out too well for humans.
2 squadrons closing in, said Lieutenant Cameron Holt, her weapons officer. Veltheri interceptors, full burn. They're not bluffing this time. Mara exhaled through her nose. They never are. The Veltheri had a language of elegance, light, tone, rhythm. To them, humans were a chaos species, unpredictable, emotional, violently adaptive.
The kind of creature that smiled while standing in front of a reactor about to go critical.
The Resolve's hull trembled as warning sirens flickered red.
Outside, the silence of space hid the streaks of oncoming plasma fire.
"Shields at 40%, Holt said, voice tight. "They're not even hailing us, Cap. Just lighting us up." "They think we'll back down," Mara murmured. "Should we?"
That earned him a thin smile.
"Lieutenant, has a human ever backed down when someone told them to?" He chuckled nervously. "Not one who lived to tell about it." Mara's hand hovered over the intercom. "Engineering, status." "Static."
Then Chief Elias Danner's voice came through rough, unbothered, with the gravelly patience of someone who'd seen too much war.
"We've got coolant leaks in the port manifold. I can patch it, but if we take another hit..." "We'll take hits," Mara cut in. "Keep her breathing." "Copy that." "But Cap, if this goes south, we're not limping home." She paused. "We won't need to."
The next barrage tore through the ship's aft plating.
The lights flickered. Somewhere deep in the vessel, a pipe ruptured, releasing a hiss that echoed like a dying breath. In the crew bay, a rookie ensign muttered, "They're gonna kill us." Elias Danner looked up from the plasma torch in his hands, eyes narrowing. "No. They're gonna try."
The Resolve spun into the shadow of a shattered moon. From the bridge, Mara watched the enemy ships fan out like a silver net. Each one moved with insect precision, cold, perfect, mathematical.
Humans weren't built like that. They were messy. They bled too easily. They laughed too loud.
And yet every alien warlord, every machine empire, every hive fleet learned the same lesson. When a human stopped talking, when their eyes went still and their jaw set, the universe itself seemed to brace. Mara's voice was calm, almost gentle.
"Lieutenant Holt. Patch me into their frequency." A flicker of static.
Then the bridge filled with the musical hum of Veltheri speech, sharp, crystalline tones that cut like glass. "Human vessel," came the translation through the ship's AI.
"You are trespassing in a quarantine system. Surrender or be annihilated." Holt glanced at Mara.
"They've got 10 ships.
We've got 1.
She studied the star map.
"Then it's fair." He blinked. "Fair?"
Her tone softened.
"Lieutenant, when they open fire again, bring all weapons online. No targeting assist. Manual aim." He stared. "You want me to?" "Just do it." Outside, space flared white. A dozen plasma bolts slammed into the Resolve shields. The deck lurched.
Mara caught herself on the table, eyes flashing, not fear, not anger.
Something deeper. Something older. She straightened. Her voice dropped to a whisper that somehow filled the room. "All right," she said. "That's it." Holt froze. Even the AI paused, a faint tremor in its tone. Mara! Arm the Thanatos array, she ordered. His mouth went dry. That thing's experimental. It'll burn out half our systems. I know. She keyed the comms. Engineering, we're going dark in 60 seconds. Route every capacitor through the belly conduit. Elias swore softly. You're about to wake the dead, Captain. Then we'd better make it worth their while. The Velthari ships began to close. On their side, they were already celebrating a sanctioned extermination, a lesson to the Terrans. And then, in the span of a heartbeat, the resolve vanished from their sensors. A pulse, silent, invisible, swept across the black. Every Velthari pilot saw it too late. The human ship reappeared, a spear of blinding light slicing through their formation. The Thanatos array, half myth, half war crime, unleashed a gravitational shockwave that folded 3 enemy frigates into themselves. The remaining ships broke formation. In their language, the word screamed across comms, run. When the silence returned, the resolve drifted among debris and faint violet fire. Holt sat trembling at his station. We just wiped out half a fleet. Mara nodded slowly. They forced our hand. He looked at her. Cap, no offense, but why'd you say it like that? Before we fired? She didn't answer right away. Her eyes drifted toward the viewport, where fragments of alien hull floated like silver leaves in the dark. Because, she said finally, when a human says, all right, that's it, it isn't just frustration. It's the sound of something ancient waking up. In the Velthari archives, a new entry was logged that night. Human vocal phrase identified as threat precursor. Immediate evacuation protocol recommended. Across a dozen systems, that message spread like wildfire. No one questioned it. No one tested it. And on the ardent resolve, Captain Mara Keen stared into the endless dark, knowing it would never be the last time those words would need to be spoken. Because peace, true peace, wasn't given. It was enforced by those who'd had enough. There are moments in galactic history that rewrite how civilizations behave. The fall of the Nthari Dyson swarm. The shattering of the alluring gate. The day the machines of Sistra went silent. And then there was the night a lone Terran corvette erased a Velthari strike group with nothing but defiance and an untested weapon. The data of that battle traveled faster than light itself, carried by rumor, distorted by fear, retold in cantinas and war rooms alike. By the time it reached the Galactic Senate on Vega Prime, the truth no longer mattered, only the myth did. They called it the Silence Protocol. Word is, muttered Senator Lyranves of the Alur Dominion, that humans possess a device capable of warping the laws of physics themselves. Across the Senate chamber, thousands of delegates murmured. They claim it was self-defense, hissed a crystalline envoy from the Velthari seats. But the sensor logs show no warning, no restraint. The human captain uttered a phrase, and then mass death followed. From the Terran section, Ambassador Jonathan Rice stood slowly. His face was carved from the calm stoicism Earth's diplomats were famous for, polished civility barely holding back something primal beneath. The phrase, he said evenly, is not a weapon. It's a warning. Then why, asked the Velthari envoy, her tone sharp with venom, do your people use it before destruction? Rice hesitated. Around him, holographic light shimmered across the dome, the senators of 1,000 species watching one man. Because, he said finally, when a human says, all right, that's it, it means we've tried everything else. The chamber fell silent. Even the autotranslators seemed to pause. Meanwhile, light years away, the ardent resolve limped through deep space under emergency power. Elias Danner was waist-deep in coolant fluid, muttering curses into the hull. The man had seen a dozen wars, but nothing like the shockwave they'd unleashed. His knuckles were cracked and oil-stained, his heart heavier than ever. Cap, he called up through the comm, we got 30% drive function. Might push her to a nearby refuel station, if we don't fry the reactor first. Make it happen, Mara replied. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were hollow. Around her, the bridge felt more like a tomb than a command deck. Cameron Holt sat across from her, his hand trembling slightly. Captain, did we just start a war? Mara didn't look up. We might have ended one before it began. He frowned. You think they'll believe that?
No, she admitted.
But they'll remember it.
2 days later, they reached Port Hestia, a neutral outpost orbiting a dying sun.
The station's commander, an insectoid Vra named Teshka, met them at the docking bay in full hazard armor. Her translator clicked nervously.
You will forgive the caution, Captain Keen, she said, stepping back as if humans carried radiation. Word of your incident has traveled. My superiors are concerned.
Mara smirked faintly. You think we're contagious? Teshka's mandibles clicked once, a sound somewhere between fear and respect. Your kind fascinates and terrifies. You are fragile. Soft-bodied. Yet you do not run from extinction. You invite it. That's one way of saying we're stubborn.
No, said Teshka, voice low.
You are something else. When cornered, you stop fearing death. My people cannot understand this. We evolved to survive. You evolved to endure.
She leaned closer.
What happens, Captain Keen, when an entire galaxy corners you?
For the first time in days, Mara smiled, not bitterly, but with the tired serenity of someone who's seen the edge and lived to describe it.
Then I suppose, she said, the galaxy will find out what happens after we say it. The Resolve's arrival at Hestia sparked panic across the networks.
Station gossip spread faster than oxygen leaks, the human ship that erased a fleet, the captain who whispered doom into the dark. Soon, security reports poured in from other sectors, ships disengaging at the mere presence of Terran transponders, treaties being rewritten overnight. Entire species began adding new clauses to their combat protocols.
If a human utters the phrase, "all right, that's it," disengage immediately. No exceptions.
They called it superstition. They called it survival instinct.
Either way, it worked.
In the Terran Navy command back on Luna, Admiral Sarah Lindholm watched the chaos unfold through layers of encrypted reports. She sat in silence for a long time before finally speaking to the AI adjutant beside her. Pull all ships with veteran captains, she ordered.
We're initiating containment.
Containment, ma'am, the AI inquired.
We can't afford another "all right, that's it" event. The galaxy's on edge. Every diplomat we have is cleaning up after one captain's decision. The AI hesitated. With respect, Admiral, do you believe Captain Keen was wrong? Lindholm's gaze hardened. No. She was human. That's what scares them.
On Port Hestia, Mara and her crew sat in the dim light of the cantina, the air thick with tension. Other species watched from a distance, pretending not to stare. Cameron Holt leaned closer.
They're looking at us like we're nuclear bombs. Elias Danner sipped from his mug. That's because we are. Mara said nothing.
She could feel it, every whisper, every gaze. Humanity had crossed a threshold, and there was no going back. A figure approached their table, tall, cloaked, moving with the calm grace of the Korthan, a telepathic race known for their emotionless composure. The being stopped and inclined its head.
Captain Keen, it said through a vibrating voice modulator. I come with a message from the Senate. They wish to debrief you on the incident. Immediately. Mara didn't blink. And if I refuse?
The Korthan tilted its head, unreadable.
Then you confirm their greatest fear. Elias muttered, we're already halfway there. Mara stood, setting down her drink.
Tell your Senate, she said, I'll come.
But if they try to cage us? Captain, Holt warned softly.
She ignored him. Then they'll see firsthand why those 4 words spread faster than light. Hours later, the Resolve detached from Port Hestia.
Engines burned blue against the dying sun.
The crew was silent, each lost in thought as the ship turned toward Vega Prime. As the stars elongated into streaks of light, Mara Keen stood alone at the viewport. The reflection of her own face looked back, tired, proud, and just a little haunted. In that reflection, she saw something the galaxy refused to understand: humanity's capacity for peace was infinite until it wasn't. And when that threshold broke, when patience snapped and quiet resolve turned to fire.
The universe itself took a step back. In the great halls of Vega Prime, word of her approach spread before the resolve even exited hyperspace. Security forces doubled. Psychic dampeners were activated. Every delegate rehearsed their words carefully. Because somewhere in the rumor, truth still lived, and it whispered like prophecy. Do not test the species that says, "All right, that's it." They do not bluff. The Galactic Senate had never been so quiet. From the upper galleries to the core floor, every delegate, every translator, every AI observer sat in silence. The chamber was a cathedral of light and glass domes of refracted suns glimmering across alien faces of every imaginable form. And at the center of it all stood a single woman. Captain Mara Keen, Terran Navy, stood unarmed, unsmiling, and unbroken. Around her shimmered the holographic remains of the Ardent Resolve's battle, 3 enemy ships folding into themselves like paper consumed by fire. The Velthari envoy's voice rang coldly through the amplifiers. "Captain Keen, you stand accused of unleashing an experimental weapon upon a neutral zone, resulting in the deaths of 642 sentient beings. Do you deny this?" Mara's voice was steady. "No." Gasps rippled through the tiers. The envoy leaned forward, crystalline features catching the light. "And you feel no remorse?" "I feel every ounce of it," Mara replied softly. "But remorse doesn't mean regret." Across the hall, Ambassador Jonathan Rice watched, heart pounding. He'd spent weeks trying to diffuse the tension, to remind the Senate that humanity's nature was not destruction, it was survival. But the more they spoke, the clearer it became, they didn't fear what humans could do. They feared what humans would do if pushed too far. And now the galaxy's oldest powers wanted to make an example of her. The tribunal's presiding voice, a massive neural construct from the concordant species, flashed in rhythmic pulses. "You claim necessity. Yet your action has destabilized 6 sectors and inspired terror across the galactic rim." Mara lifted her head. "Because they saw what happens when a species stops running." The construct tilted. "Explain." Mara took a step forward, her boots echoing in the silence. "When I said those words, 'all right, that's it,' it wasn't a battle cry. It was surrender. Not to them, not to the Senate, but to the part of us that keeps hoping the universe will finally stop testing how far we can bend before we break." She looked up, eyes hard. "We tried peace. We tried compromise. We even tried silence. And every time, someone mistook it for weakness." A hush fell so deep the translators didn't dare break it. "When humans say 'all right, that's it,'" she continued, "it's not a threat. It's the sound of hope dying. It's the moment mercy runs out, and survival takes its place." Her gaze swept the room. "And every species in this hall knows that moment, because every one of you has faced extinction. The only difference is, when we face it, we don't kneel. We build something from the ashes." Up in the diplomatic gallery, Rice whispered under his breath, "She's turning this trial into a history lesson." Beside him, Admiral Lindholm appeared as a holographic projection. "Good," she said. "It's about time the galaxy remembered who we are." The Velthari envoy struck her staff against the floor. "Emotive rhetoric will not absolve you, human. The Senate demands restraint, not barbarism." Mara's tone sharpened. "Restraint?" She gestured toward the projection of the destroyed Velthari ships. "You call it barbarism because you've never needed restraint. You've never had your home burned, your children buried, your skies darkened by the same peacekeepers who told you to be civilized." Her words echoed like gunfire. Across the chamber, a few species shifted uncomfortably. The insectoid Vra lowered their antennae, the reptilian Dravix hissed in agreement. Entire civilizations built on conquest found themselves staring at their reflections and seeing something deeply human there. Then the unexpected happened. The chamber doors opened, and a figure entered, tall, cloaked in shadow. The guards stepped aside without order. The being moved to the center dais and removed its hood. It was Teshka, the Vra station commander from Port Hestia. Her translator clicked as she spoke. "I stand as witness. The Captain Keen did not strike first.
She did what we would all do when cornered. When our nests are threatened, the Vra fight to the death.
When the Draviks are dishonored, they devour their enemies whole. Yet when a human defends themselves, you call it madness.
Her mandibles trembled.
Perhaps you fear them because you know, deep down, they are what you used to be. The chamber erupted into chaos, voices overlapping in a dozen frequencies. The Senate moderators tried to restore order, but the words had already taken root. For the first time in centuries, the fear of humanity began to blur with something else, understanding.
Hours passed. The tribunal recessed to deliberate. Outside the chamber, crowds gathered: news drones, diplomats, civilians.
Rumors said the Senate might ban Terran expansion beyond Sol. Others whispered the opposite, that humanity might finally be offered a permanent council seat. Inside her waiting chamber, Mara sat alone. Through the glass, she watched the stars whirl slowly across Vega Prime's horizon. Elias Danner entered quietly, setting a steaming cup beside her. Coffee. Synthetic, but close enough.
She smiled faintly.
You shouldn't be here. Never stopped me before.
He sat beside her, eyes on the stars.
You think they'll convict you?
She shrugged.
They might. But they can't stop what's already started.
He looked at her, brow furrowing.
What's that?
The shift, she said simply. They've lived so long thinking peace means silence. But peace isn't quiet, Elias.
It's endurance.
It's saying all right, that's it, and still choosing to protect what matters. He chuckled softly. You know, Cap, they'll be telling stories about you for centuries.
Mara looked down at her hands, scarred and still trembling. Let them. Maybe they'll finally understand what those 4 words mean.
When the tribunal returned, the entire chamber stood in anticipation.
The presiding construct's voice rolled like thunder.
Captain Mara Keen, the Senate has reached a verdict.
You are hereby absolved of war crimes, on grounds of defensive necessity. A stunned silence followed.
The Velthari envoy flared with outrage, but the declaration was final. The Senate had chosen not fear, but reason.
Mara bowed her head.
Then humanity thanks the Senate for remembering that survival is not a crime. In the aftermath, something remarkable happened. Across the galaxy, new protocols emerged, not of fear, but of respect.
Velthari ships began broadcasting peace beacons when encountering Terrans. The Draviks offered joint patrols along the border sectors.
Even the Korthan, cold and distant, extended a hand of shared defense. They called it the Accord of Resolve, a pact built not on fear of human wrath, but on understanding the boundary that defined them, the line where restraint ended and resolve began. And through it all, Captain Mara Keen's phrase became more than a warning.
It became legend. A symbol.
A reminder whispered across every frontier where peace was fragile and hope was thin.
All right, that's it.
Not the sound of destruction.
The sound of humanity standing up again.
Years later, a monument rose on Vega Prime's western ridge, a silver obelisk etched with words in every known language.
At its base was a simple inscription. Here stands the line the universe will never cross again. Because one human finally said, all right, that's it.
Beneath the stars, Captain Mara Keen stood quietly before it, older now, the galaxy finally calm.
Elias Danner's voice crackled over her combs. You ready to head home, Cap?
She smiled, eyes glinting with that same fierce light the universe had learned to respect.
Yeah, she said softly. All right. That's it.